The man in the expensive suit sat alone at the fast food table, his untouched fries growing cold as he stared at his phone. He didn't notice the worn-down woman approach, holding the hand of a small boy with hungry eyes. What happened next would change 3 lives forever, and remind us all that kindness comes in unexpected packages, and sometimes, so does redemption. If you're touched by this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us of our shared humanity. Sarah clutched her son's small hand tightly as they entered the crowded fast food restaurant. The smell of grease and salt hung in the air, making her stomach growl painfully. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, saving what little food they had for Ethan. At 6 years old, he was too young to understand why they sometimes had to skip meals, why they lived in a shelter, or why Mommy cried at night when she thought he was asleep. "I'm hungry, Mommy," Ethan whispered, his eyes fixed on a tray of fries sitting virtually untouched on a nearby table. The man eating alone hadn't touched them, too absorbed in whatever important business occupied his attention on his sleek phone. Sarah had exactly $4.17 in her pocket, not enough for a proper meal for both of them. Pride told her to walk away, to preserve her dignity. Desperation told her to swallow that pride for her son's sake. "Wait here for just a second, sweetie," she said, guiding Ethan to stand beside her as she approached the stranger's table. "Excuse me, sir," Sarah said, her voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise. "I'm sorry to bother you, but, can we share your fries, sir? My son is very hungry, and I—" The words caught in her throat, shame burning her cheeks. The man looked up, annoyed at first. His steel-gray eyes, cold as winter, took in the woman and child. Something flickered across his face, recognition, perhaps, or memory. For a moment, he seemed to see something beyond them, something distant and painful. "Take them," he said abruptly, pushing the tray toward them. "I'm not hungry." "Thank you," Sarah whispered, guiding Ethan to sit. The boy reached eagerly for a fry, but Sarah caught his hand gently. "What do we say first?" she reminded him. "Thank you, mister," Ethan said, his small voice earnest and grateful. The man nodded curtly, but instead of returning to his phone, he watched them. Something about the woman's dignity despite her circumstances, the way she taught her son manners even in desperation, stirred something long dormant in him. "When was the last time you ate?" he asked suddenly. Sarah hesitated, embarrassment coloring her face. "I had some toast yesterday." The man, Alexander Reeves, though they didn't know it yet, signaled a server. "Bring them whatever they want. Full meals. Dessert too." He turned to Sarah. "Order anything. It's on me." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "Why would you do that for strangers?" Alexander's gaze drifted to the window, to the gray city beyond. "Because 30 years ago, I was that little boy. And nobody helped us." As they ate, Alexander found himself sharing more than a meal. He told them how he'd grown up in poverty, how his mother had worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. How he'd promised himself he'd never be hungry again. How he'd built his tech empire from nothing, becoming a billionaire by 40, but losing something essential along the way. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, he admitted, "but I eat alone in fast food restaurants because I have nowhere better to be. No one waiting for me." Sarah shared her own story, how she'd lost her teaching job when the school district cut funding, how medical bills from Ethan's asthma had drained her savings, how they'd lost their apartment 3 months ago. How she still read to Ethan every night at the shelter, using books from the public library to keep his education going. "He's so smart," she said, pride momentarily overcoming her exhaustion. "He deserves better than this." Alexander watched Ethan carefully color on the children's menu, staying perfectly within the lines, focused and determined despite his circumstances. "What if I offered you a job?" he asked suddenly. Sarah laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Doing what?" "I've applied everywhere. I need an education coordinator for my foundation. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, who knows the value of learning even in difficult circumstances. He slid a business card across the table. Alexander Reeves, CEO of Reeves Technologies. Sarah's eyes widened as recognition dawned. Everyone knew Reeves Technologies, the company was worth billions. Which meant this unassuming man sharing their table was. You're that Alexander Reeves, she stammered. He nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. The very same. And I'm serious about the job offer. But why me? You don't even know me. Alexander looked at Ethan, then back at Sarah. Because you taught your son to say thank you before taking food, even when he was starving. Because you're reading library books to him in a shelter instead of giving up. Character matters more than credentials, Sarah. 3 months later, Sarah sat in her new office at the Reeves Foundation, overseeing programs that helped families like hers find housing, education, and employment. She and Ethan had moved into a comfortable apartment, his asthma was properly treated, and he was thriving in a good school. Alexander had found something he'd been missing for decades: purpose beyond profit, connection beyond transactions. He became a regular visitor at their home, teaching Ethan chess and helping with science projects. The loneliness that had driven him to eat alone in fast food restaurants gradually faded. One evening, as they shared a home-cooked meal, Ethan looked up at Alexander with serious eyes. Mom says you saved us. But I think maybe we saved you too. Alexander's throat tightened with emotion. You're a very wise young man, Ethan. And you're absolutely right. 5 years later, the Reeves Foundation had helped thousands of families escape poverty. Alexander had transformed from a cold, isolated billionaire into a man known for his compassion and generosity. Sarah had risen to become the foundation's executive director, implementing innovative programs that addressed the root causes of poverty, not just its symptoms. And it had all begun with a simple question: can we share your fries, sir? Sometimes the smallest moments of human connection can change everything. Sometimes the people we help end up helping us in ways we never imagined. And sometimes, the family we need isn't the one we're born into, but the one we create through kindness, understanding, and second chances. As Alexander watched Sarah and Ethan laughing together in the garden of what was now their shared home, he realized that all his billions had never bought him what this makeshift family had freely given him: belonging, purpose, and love. The man who had everything had been empty inside until he shared his fries with a hungry child. Now, his heart was as full as his bank account, and infinitely more valuable. Remember, kindness costs nothing but can be worth everything. Sometimes the person you help today might be the one who saves you tomorrow. We never know the full story of the strangers we pass, or the impact a simple act of generosity might have. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more tales that remind us of our shared humanity and the power of compassion to transform lives. Because in a world that can sometimes feel cold and disconnected, these moments of genuine human connection are what truly matter.